In this session, we will speak about two of the smallest and potentially most exciting new wine regions in Canada. Although neither produces VQA wines as of yet, the distinctive climate and terroir of Nova Scotia and Quebec, combined with the passion, loyalty, and commitment of the people who live there, provides these two up-and-coming wine regions with very bright futures. As you can see in the map above, the red star is Niagara, and all the other regions in purple are well-established, important wine-producing regions, while those in green are relatively new, smaller regions of growing importance. As mentioned, the northern reaches of BC's Okanagan Valley extend north of 50 degrees, and the southernmost wine region in Canada, Pelee Island, is located at just north of 41 degrees. This means that Canada's wine regions span a full 9 degrees of latitude. This is just slightly less than the number of degrees latitude covered by wine-producing countries like Italy and New Zealand. Quebec and Nova Scotia's wine regions are located somewhere in the middle, and this, combined with proximity to the ocean, or lack thereof, are the major criteria that define the climate in each of these two provinces. Nova Scotia is a young and vibrant wine industry in which interesting and unique varietals are permitted and where innovation and experimentation is openly embraced. Located on the same 45-degree latitude as Bordeaux, our soils have been formed and shaped by glacial movements and have ancient and common origins with the soils of Europe, including England, France, and as far south as Portugal. The largest city, Halifax, is a mere 45 minutes drive from the main wine region, Annapolis Valley. And the many big cities of the American Northeast are also within driving distance or a short flight away. The locavore movement is very strong in this province. Farmers markets are common and offer high quality local products, and all this means that wine producers are selling out of their wines every year. Of the 20 wineries and almost 100 growers in Nova Scotia, only half of these growers farm 10 or more acres of grapes. There are 11 growing areas dotted across the province. However, there are 6 main growing areas, with 2 of these, Annapolis and Gaspereau, the epicenter of wine production. According to a study commissioned by the Canadian Vintners Association in 2013, the wine industry contributes a whopping $200 million to the provincial economy on an annual basis. Not bad for a tiny new industry such as this. For information on Nova Scotia wine standards, please visit www.winesofnovascotia.ca. Here we have 2 maps which show you in red where the majority of the wineries are located. As you can see, the vast majority are located on the sheltered northern shore near the Bay of Fundy, where the world-famous tides actually provide some moderating influence on the region's vineyards. With over 7,000 kilometers of coastline, no town, village, or indeed vineyard is ever very far from water. Most vineyards are within 20 kilometers of the Bay of Fundy coast and its world-famous tides. This sheltered part of the province provides a moderating influence, mitigating extremes of cold in the winter and heat in the summer. The result is a long, warm, but rarely hot growing season that can extend well into the fall months, giving grapes plenty of time to ripen their sugars, acids, and phenolics, all at the same time developing the important aromas and flavors for which this region is becoming so famous. Since 1990, the industry has grown in leaps and bounds. Over the 25-year period, we've seen the number of wineries and growers more than double, and the number of acres of vines almost triple. The 6 main wine growing areas are Annapolis Valley, Avon River Valley, Bear River Valley, Gaspereau Valley, Le Havre River Valley, and Northumberland Coast. According to the Winkler Growing Degree Day scale, anything below 1400 GDD is suitable for small-scale production of high-quality wines from early ripening winter hardy varieties. In those vintages where GDDs exceed 1400, a broader range of high-quality white and red wines can be made. Note that Nova Scotia has a GDD range that typically averages from 950 to 1250 GDD. Frost-free days average roughly 175, which is a little less than much of the Niagara region in Ontario. And temperatures in the winter average minus 21 degrees Celsius. At minus 24 degrees Celsius, there is serious concern for bud and vine damage. But at minus 21, everything might just be okay. To give you an idea of how these GDD numbers compare to other fine wine producing regions, I've attached this chart. Notice that the Annapolis Valley is very similar to that of Champagne in France and the Rheingau in Germany. This alone suggests that cool climate white varieties like Riesling and early harvest wine styles like sparkling wines make a lot of sense for this region. As a new region still trying to determine its future course, and one with a relatively cool growing season and potentially cold winters, the percentage of hybrid varieties in the ground is quite significant at 70%. Unlike other regions of the wine world, however, these hybrids are celebrated not only for their climatic feasibility, but also for the wonderfully bright, fresh, and aromatic wines they can produce in this unique corner of Canada. Here is a full list of planted varieties, showing that hybrids do in fact dominate, while well-known vinifera cultivars such as Chardonnay, Riesling, and Pinot Noir are present and are on the rise. One can't speak about the wine industry in Nova Scotia without devoting adequate attention to the amazing story of Tidal Bay, the province's signature appellation white wine. The initial concept of this appellation was formed by Peter Gamble in September of 2009 and brought to the attention of the Winery Association of Nova Scotia, or WANS, in December 2009. Gamble's new appellation plan involved the establishment of an appellation implementation committee. The thought was to do a cool climate white blend that would showcase Nova Scotia's terroir and culture. Further, it would celebrate the important hybrid varieties which were proving so important to the industry, and would result in a wine that paired wonderfully with the local famous seafood. Similar wines had been proven successful in other parts of the world. Châteauneuf du Pape in France, a blend of up to 13 different red and white varieties, is a great example of a blended wine that really celebrates the local terroir, food, and culture every vintage, albeit in a warmer Mediterranean climate. Gamble and his team approached some key writers and influencers in the province to ensure the concept would have broad support when finally introduced. The composition of the independent tasting panel was discussed, and Tidal Bay was welcomed by the consumer and enjoys great success today. What a great way to tell the Nova Scotia wine story. The Tidal Bay appellation requires wines to be submitted to an independent tasting panel, which will give these submissions simply a pass or fail. The style must be fresh, crisp, nearly dry, still white wine that showcases the cool climate and distinctly mineral and aromatic style of Nova Scotia. The bright signature Nova Scotia aromatic component is also an important part of the wine's profile. The wine should include less emphatically aromatic varieties whose relative neutrality serve to enhance the vivid Nova Scotia terroir in the resulting wine, and combine that with highly aromatic varieties nevertheless capable with prescribed maximums of displaying uniquely Nova Scotian aromatic traits in the blended wine. Further, the grapes used in the making of the wine must be 100% Nova Scotia. The alcohol must be capped at a maximum 11%. And, of course, the permissible grape varieties should fall into the two aforementioned very general categories. The primary varieties, which will make up the majority of the final blend, including the 4 hybrids: L'Acadie, one of the most important white grapes in Nova Scotia, Céval Blanc, Vidal Blanc, and Geisenheim 318. The secondary varieties, which are optional but can't be more than 49% of the final blend, include both vinifera and hybrid varieties. The main ones are Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Chasselas, Auxerrois, Ortega, Cigarreba. And finally, the tertiary varieties, which are typically highly aromatic but can't take over the character of the blend, must not exceed 15% of the final blend. These include, amongst others, the very aromatic Gewürztraminer, the hybrid Traminette, and New York Muscat. The marketing and promotional arm of Wine of Nova Scotia is WANS. The Winery Association of Nova Scotia is the main governing body. Established in 2002, WANS plays a similar role as the Wine Marketing Association of Ontario in Ontario. It acts as a voice for the grape and wine industry, lobbying government for funds and support. WANS also maintains close contact with the Canadian Vintners Association, Canada's national voice for wine. Next, we introduce you to the exciting emerging wine industry in La Belle Province, Quebec. Similar to Nova Scotia, it's difficult to learn about and sample the wines of Quebec without actually visiting the province, because the wines typically don't leave the province's borders. However, we will do our best to give you a sense of this beautiful province's potential. There are over 80 wineries in Quebec farming more than 650 hectares, which is the equivalent of roughly 1,600 acres of vineyards. Certainly, whenever you talk about Quebec, the focus of the discussion is often around the challenging climate here. A northern continental climate, the wine regions experience extremes in each of the 4 seasons, with extreme winter cold, extreme summer heat and humidity, and frost and rain risks in spring and fall. Hail can also be an issue. This, combined with the low number of growing degree days and variability of sunshine hours, suggests that sparkling wines, white wines, and ice wines are the most suitable wine styles to be found here. That is indeed the case, and hybrid varieties once again dominate the landscape. However, vinifera is found in pockets, and its presence is growing. The winemakers in Quebec are committed to making some of the best red hybrid wines in the world, and their commitment to excellent yields some very impressive results. As mentioned, one of the great challenges that the Quebec industry faces is the extreme winter cold. Recent experiments at Brock University and in Quebec looked at the use of special textiles to provide winter protection. Instead of burying vines with hay or with the soil, as they commonly had done in the past, the vines instead are covered with an insulating textile to trap heat and provide insulation. Some producers prefer a combination of straw and textiles. Results are promising for low trellised vines with a very high bud survival rate. It's safer for the vines too, and less labor intensive, although there are additional costs that a winery must assume. Quebec is certainly doing something very special with hybrid varieties. There are countless examples of fine wines made from grapes like Vidal, Céval Blanc, Frontenac, and Marquette, where, if served in a blind tasting, many would assume they were high-quality vinifera wines. The problem is, the international marketplace has historically frowned on hybrids when compared to pure Vitis vinifera-based wines, such as those made from Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Noir, or Cabernet. The question is whether the Quebec wineries can continue to carve out a viable future for themselves using hybrids, or will they become dependent on vinifera in the future as they learn to protect and grow these more sensitive varieties more successfully. Two wine growers associations are at odds with one another in Quebec. The battle centers around which grape variety should be the focus of the industry and whether or not any juice or grapes grown outside the province should be permitted in Quebec wines. Do hybrids have a future, or like Ontario, will they ultimately be pulled out and replaced with the weather-sensitive vinifera varieties? Winemakers are a stubborn bunch, and none more so than those in Quebec, who are perpetually dealing with challenges. If any world in the region is capable and committed to making great wines in difficult circumstances, Quebec must be it. For more information, visit macleans.ca and search The Quest to Fix Quebec's Wines. Wines were first grown on the island of Quebec when Jacques Cartier saw wild vines growing in the 1500s, and he subsequently named the island Île de Bacchus after the Italian god of wine. Today, wines are grown near Quebec City on the north shore of the Laurentian River, and most importantly, in the regions of Montérégie and Canton de l'Est, south of Montreal. Montérégie and Canton de l'Est are essentially one contiguous region, sometimes referred to as Brome-Missisquoi wine region. They extend east to west between Sherbrooke and Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. An extension of the American Appalachian Mountains, this is a land of countless hills, lakes, dense forest, sheltered valleys, and rolling pasture land. Vineyards are important, but so too are other cash crops: apples, cheeses, dairy and meats, and charcuterie. In fact, every little village seems to have a local boulangerie, a charcuterie, and fromagerie within its limits or nearby. Not surprisingly, the Quebecois have preserved much of the way of life lived by the European colonists. To describe a single terroir in Quebec is impossible. Certainly the continental climate pervades the province with limited relief from rivers and lakes. Soils are diverse, with mixes of clays, marls, pebbles, and sands over marine sediment and limestone bedrock. As time passes and vignerons figure out what works best, our knowledge of the Quebecois terroir will become clearer and the wines more consistent and refined.